Conversations across time. 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 Conversations across.
Good evening, and welcome once again to Conversations Across Time. If you're a regular viewer, you will know that this is part 3 of a series that we are doing on the Supreme Court. And the last 2 weeks have been riveting. If you did not see them, I urge you to check them out on YouTube because they really have been very good and informative discussions. Let me introduce who is on the panel tonight. Of course, seated here in studio with me is Irv Madnick, and Irv Madnick is the legal expert for Conversations Across Time. Explain to them why it's so necessary for us to have a legal expert.
Well, the reason it's necessary is because we keep talking about legal terminology, and everything is legal, and it's very difficult to understand in certain instances. So I'm here to turn all of this legalese into common sense, and I hope I can do that for you. Thank you.
Okay. And our guest, Justice Scalia.
I am Antonin Scalia. I was appointed by President Ronald Reagan in 1986 to be an Associate Justice of the Supreme Court. I stayed there until my passing in 2016. I've always had a reputation to be one of the most hardline conservatives on the court.
Justice Marshall.
I am Thurgood Marshall, appointed by President Lyndon Johnson in 1965, serving until 1991. My passing happened shortly thereafter. I have been an advocate for justice and equality that is not separate, and have been a staunch supporter and advocate for the moral compass of the court and of the country.
And finally, Justice Holmes.
Yes, I'm Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr. I was appointed to the Supreme Court by President Theodore Roosevelt, and my claim to fame, among other things, is I came up with the doctrine that limited free speech, and the doctrine I came up with was clear and present danger, which meant that you had free speech up to a point, but you couldn't say things under the First Amendment that would put other people or the country in danger. And there's nothing more important to consider about that ruling than what is going on now in terms of the political discourse and the rhetoric in the United States today.
Okay, well, this episode, as I promised, is about Supreme Court reform. And certainly there are issues that have brought this to the forefront, not the least of which are some recent court decisions. And if anyone wants to talk about that, I suppose that a good place to start would be with the overturning of Roe v. Wade.
It's going to be very, very difficult to set rules because the Supreme Court has to set their own rules for ethics, and if they refuse to do so, there's very little that we can do. However, it's possible that we can enlarge the Supreme Court. The Congress can do that. Congress can appoint additional members to the Supreme Court, and hopefully if that could be done, again, it would be difficult because it would have to go through Congress, but it would make sense in that there are 13 federal judicial districts. There are 9 Supreme Court justices, and they have been less Supreme Court justices before and more, and they can be added by the Congress. And if they add 4 more, it'll be 13, and it'll be 1 for each judicial district. And hopefully, if there were more people on the court with different viewpoints, not all appointed by the Federalist Society, then maybe, and only maybe, it's a very maybe that it can be done, But maybe under those circumstances, the ethical elements would present themselves and maybe be solved. But it's got to be solved by the court itself, and that's a very, very difficult problem. There's nothing that we can do to force them.
With all due respect, that's a dangerous precedent because you can expand it to 13. Let's say another political party wins in a landslide and they have total control of both houses of Congress. They can expand it to 16 and put 3 more of their political judges who have the same political philosophy as that political party. And then in the next elect, so there's no limit. So you would have to have a way to say this is it. And I don't know how you do that. How do you say, like, okay, we're going to expand it to 13, but never again more and never again less? I don't see how that is a viable solution.
Well, I don't know either, and I think though if the Congress can expand it, then Congress can set a limit.
Well, maybe you're right.
I'm not sure.
I would really have to.
There's no constitution.
Yeah, but that would be challenged. That would be challenged in the court, the very court that you're trying to reform that doesn't want to be reformed. So I don't. It's a catch-22.
Well, that's why I said it would be very difficult to do. There's no question about it. But that's. But
I think Ms. Crawford wanted to get the justices, myself and Justice Marshall and Justice Scalia, to comment on the recent case. And my philosophy as Associate Justice was that the Constitution is a living, breathing thing, and it has to accept what the public wants. And it is inconceivable to me that the court ruled to outlaw abortion when 65% of the American people, that's Republicans, conservatives, Democrats, were in favor of Roe versus Wade.
I'm curious about your position on weaponry, especially because it was commonly known that no one who valued their lives should ever go on a hunting trip with you, and so let's hear your response to it now that you see from your perch, wherever you may be. Now that you see what gun violence has become in this country, now that you see that babies, that it's parents send their children to school never knowing if they're going to see that child again because of the gun violence that has happened in schools. I mean, we all thought when the incident in Connecticut happened, we just all thought that, okay, that's it. They're going to do something about gun reform. That did not happen. And sir, how do you feel from your perch about what you did in your lifetime to allow the advance of weaponry, and it's actually high-grade military weaponry? We're not just talking about handguns. How do you feel?
Well, Ms. Crawford, gentlemen, the Second Amendment begins a well-regulated militia, and which meant in that era, and as you're right, Mr. Madnick, I am a originalist. In that era, the militia was all the white males in the county coming together in regular formations, drills, etc., training, etc., to put down uprisings of slaves. That's how it came about. And yes, I do regret the loss of life, but as originalist, I must say two things. One, it's in the Constitution. It is, as you say, set in stone, and any attempt to dilute the Second Amendment would be unconstitutional. And second, politics plays an enormous role in this. the National Rifle Association and the allies of Mr. Trump are a powerful lobby against any attempt to regulate civilian possession of firearms. And I don't see it happening ever at all.
You don't see any
That's it.
regulation. You don't see any
Nope.
regulation happening.
No, not at all. It's never
Justice
going to happen.
Marshall. Justice Marshall. Well, I listen. The fact that the interpretation that Justice Scalia has and the basis for that interpretation are disturbing to me. But I want to hear from you.
Well, there is quite a bit to be disturbed about. I've heard a number of different things. I think it's important to remember that those who are referred to as founding fathers, a great majority of them were owners of slaves, and pursuant to numerical balance, if not straight prejudice or dehumanization, all who looked like me were measured to be 3/5 of other people. It is incredibly disheartening to witness the dismantling of work that I dedicated my career to, Roe v. Wade, most certainly foremost thereamong, but also the things that are happening around affirmative action. I believe what we are witnessing is the propagation of the stacking of the deck, so to speak, as relates to interpretation, as relates to interests. And it's unfortunate that there seems to be no actual way to bring this into balance. I am looking at our current situation as being a salty soup situation. If you are making soup and it's salty, the way you can't take the salt out of it, you must increase the volume of things that will in fact balance that. It's difficult to envision our current political situation being one that would be interested in such an adjustment. The notion of expanding the court, however, I do agree to some extent with Justice Holmes. However, the number 13 has a particular relevance in that there are, in fact, 13 judicial districts, and it is a logical number to expand the court to. I can see no other vehicle for reform, because what we have is an entrenched dedication to defacing democracy as it has been traditionally known.
Wow. Well, I'm wondering, Justice Holmes, if when Mr. Madnick was talking about increasing it by 4 to 13, and as Justice Marshall pointed out, there are 13 judicial districts. Could not legislation be drafted that would limit the amount of expansion to 13 based upon the number of judicial districts, which would mean that, of course, they could back into it and increase the judicial districts, but I'm just saying, as it stands now, 13 would seem logical, but you'd have to marry it with the idea that the expansion can only be that there are one justice per judicial district. Do you think that would pass constitutional muster?
I think your rationale would make sense, and if they wrote the legislation that way, that would be great. So you can expand it to 13, and saying as long as there's only 13, federal judicial districts, that's what the court has to be, and we don't create any more that would limit the number of justices. But first of all, that would be challenging, because once you allow Congress to expand the Supreme Court, I don't know if the court would rule that it would be constitutional to say you can never do it again.
Well,
We know Congress has the power to expand it, and that it's been done historically. It was less than 9, and so it's been done historically. But I don't know if they can limit it, and if they can't, I mean, I would be all for having 13 members of the Supreme Court, and that would correspond to the number of federal judicial districts. But I don't know how you limit it, and then it becomes political. Every party, especially if they win a landslide and have a strong majority, would put their own additions to the court, and you would have a court that was virtually would be impotent.
how about if you made it one step further and said no president, no four-year president for one term can place more than one person on the Supreme Court, so that
Again,
what happens?
I would be all in favor.
Wouldn't that be one way to do it? And then continue along that way, because parties.
What would you do if there were 3 deaths and there were 3 vacancies? Just have a vacancy on the court.
You would still have 9 members or 11 members. You'd still have a significant number of people to make decisions, but the maximum number would be.
I would be all in favor of any of those reforms. I'm just
Okay.
And I'm sure that the average American person would want to see a reform of the court, but I'm not sure it could ever get done. And there's a danger in doing it. There's
a danger in doing everything.
Concern.
It's always
That's
dangerous,
true.
whatever you do.
Justice Scalia, have you an opinion on a way to reform the court? I mean,
Actually, I benefit from the court the way it is at this moment, and what you call reform would end our oligarchy. Yes, we are an oligarchy. We are not a democratic organization, and we're not worried at all about the public. I mean, if 99.99% of the people in this country supported, say, gun control, it would have no effect on our opinion. And likewise, what you call reform we will consider unconstitutional, and therefore, I forgive the poor English, it ain't gonna happen.
Okay.
Well, that's the opinion.
We're speaking of it currently from mechanisms. I believe that the grassroots mechanism is the place for there to be focus. I believe that if 99.9% of the people said anything, that at some point that particular position would have to affect the manner in which the court works. In addition, when we're talking about the solution to the salty soup situation, that solution has to come from the involvement of the people in the process. So at the very root of all change is people exercising their right to vote, such that they can have the kind of representation that would make these bold moves that most of us see as very necessary.
And there we are back to what the basic tenor of this discussion is: vote. Because when the people get together and they vote, then the majority opinion of whatever it is will be in place. And that's the only way to do it. That's what democracy is all about. You have to get the people out to vote. Because too many people just lay back and let other people do it, but everybody has to get out there and vote. And if they do, then democracy will work. Otherwise, we're going to move closer and closer to an autocracy and a country that I don't think any of us would want to be in.
What is unfortunate is that we are, as we're discussing this, we are speaking as though the public has to be 99% for something. And with the decisions with Roe, for instance, what is it? 70% of
Correct.
the entire public, voting public, believes that there should be choice.
Sure. It doesn't have to be 99.9%.
But it has to be some number higher than 70, because clearly the Supreme Court is
democracy, when you talk about democracy, you talk about the majority.
Yes.
And the majority is 51% or 52% or whatever it is. But it doesn't have to be 99%. But if you have enough people that want to change and want to move in a different direction, you can do it if you vote, if people get together and vote. I mean, it's even happened in Kansas, where they had a vote on whether or not they were going to amend the Constitution
for choice.
To go,
and that was
to eliminate abortion. And 65, in a very, very, very red state, 65% of the people voted it down. So if you vote, you can change. You can make change.
Everything you say is absolutely correct. And the fascists who dominate the Republican Party know that as well. And so if you look at what they are doing, they're trying to restrict the right of people to vote. And other than the last court decision, the Supreme Court in the last 10 years has been very instrumental in restricting the right to vote, and the things that Justice Marshall has fought for through his whole life to expand the right to vote. So they know very well what you're talking about, and they know if they let the general population who has age and citizenship the right to vote, that they will lose these issues that they're so fond of. So therefore,
that example that you use is precisely the energy that is required. The fact that people have opinions in one way or another and can answer a poll in a particular way is one thing and shows up statistically. What shows up actually is people who actually show up. So what we have currently is power masquerading as authority, because those of us, or the people who have the authority, are not exercising that authority. So the attacks on the voting rights situations and the manner in which all of these things are crafted for certain people to retain power. So these are things that happen in the light of day. What must also happen in the light of day is the dedication of people to the basic democracy, the basic democratic principles, the basic principles of democracy that allow all of us to indeed be treated equally, and allow all of us the rights to choice and the rights to go to school without fear of someone with an assault weapon showing up and disrupting class.
I have to interject here, Ms. Crawford, gentlemen. You have to understand that my side is quite capable of these pseudo issues that will distract voters and the media. You know, the news media will take on every exciting, sexy article, issue, and ignore substantive issues like gun control. And you know, my faction will go to these school boards and city councils and rant and rave about such things as what the children are reading in the libraries of the school, and whether that there's litter boxes outside of classrooms, and all sorts of nonsensical stuff, and to distract from the fact of voting rights, etc.
Now,
they have energy too, and I honestly don't believe you liberals have the energy to stand up to them. I really don't.
So what I want to do now is, because I hear you loud and clear, you have said this in the past 2 weeks, and now this is the third time you have repeated that you do not believe that liberals have the stamina to withstand the assault that folk of your ilk have taken on democracy. And so we hear you, and no, we appreciate your honesty. I'd like to hear, as final thoughts from Justice Marshall and from Justice Holmes.
Sadly, what is true is that there is a considerable anemia of resolve among those who are truly focused on justice. Those of the conservative ilk are very organized. All of the rights and all of the benefits that were attained through the civil rights struggle and through the exercise of that mechanism were attained through organized process. That is to say that those who were of these opinions that equal protection under the law and all of these things were important, organized themselves around these principles. There is, I would say, a lack of organization and a call for a reconstitution of the organizing of those who, in fact, are in the majority, who stand for justice and civil rights as they have been protected up until this point.
Thank you. Justice Holmes?
I could not disagree with Justice Scalia more. His history has shown that the so-called liberals, or what you want to call them, depending on the period of history the activism was effectuated, were tougher than the conservatives. So go through history, look at the abolitionists, look at the civil rights movement with Mr. Marshall, who knows more about it than I. So I think you will see that the resolve of the progressives, the liberals, will be even stronger than what he perceives to be the bullies of the right fascist movement.
Thank you. And Irv?
Well, listen, I tend to agree with Justice Marshall and Justice Holmes. And I think, and I can't reiterate it anymore, the most important thing is to vote. We brought up the school boards. I mean, even for the school boards, you have to vote. You have to vote all up and down the line, not just for the President of the United States, but for your local representatives, because that's where change comes from. So everybody, get out to vote, most important thing.
I am so pleased because Irv, you don't waver. You are always encouraging and admonishing folk for not voting. You are encouraging people to vote and admonishing them for not voting. And that, of course, is the mantra of Conversations Across Time. We're not trying to tell you what to think. We just want to make sure you are thinking. Well, guess what? If you don't vote, you're not thinking.
Right.
So, Justice Scalia, I appreciate you because you know what? Your honesty is right out there. People can see it.
I'm just calling it as it is, Ms. Crawford.
I understand.
Like I said, I don't
understand.
believe you liberals have the stamina to stand up to us.
And with that, I will say to Justice Scalia, Justice Marshall, Justice Holmes, and to Irv, thank you so much. And to our audience, I thank you for listening. I thank you for thinking, and I thank you for voting. This has been Conversations Across Time. Good night.
Conversations across time. Conversations across time. Conversations across time. Conversations across